At first, Alex thought it was the cat again. A soft, rhythmic thud echoed from the guest house behind the main wall. 3 dull steps, then silence. The kind that creeps under your skin when the world around you holds its breath. The wind was still. Even the trees outside stood unnaturally frozen. He sat upright on the couch, the spine of his book slipping between his fingers. Forgotten. It was 2:11 a.m. His eyes flicked to the security light outside the guest house. It was on. It's probably nothing. Probably motion sensor again. Maybe a raccoon. But even as he tried to reason, the muscles in his jaw tightened. He stood, pulling on his hoodie as his bare feet pressed into the hardwood floor, cold and unwelcoming. As he crossed the living room, the soft creak of the wooden deck outside reached his ears. Someone was moving. Deliberately, not like an animal. Not rushed, not panicked. Calm. He opened the back door slowly. The walkway was dimly lit. The guest house door stood slightly ajar, a thin blade of warm yellow light slicing the darkness. Did he call out? Instead, he stepped forward, each footstep sounding too loud in the cold silence. He could hear a kettle whistle faintly from inside. Music? No. His old Bluetooth speaker was playing Hosier. He hadn't used it in weeks. And then he saw it. His robe. His gray robe. His robe. Worn by someone else. A man! Taller. Broader. Bearded. Alex froze. The man turned around, holding a coffee mug like it was his own kitchen. "Oh," the man said, almost casually. "You must be Alex." Before Alex could respond, another voice joined in. "Babe, it's fine," Lena called out from behind the door, her voice painfully relaxed. She stepped into the light, barefoot, wearing one of his t-shirts. Her eyes were calm, almost practiced. "We were going to tell you in time." Her words sliced through him sharper than any scream could have. Not anger, not guilt, just calm. Something inside Alex cracked, but no sound escaped. He looked at her. Really looked. The way she placed her hand gently on the man's arm, like it had done so many times with him. Her expression was unreadable, but her body said everything. Comfort, familiarity. He turned without a word. His throat burned with unsaid rage, confusion, and something colder. Clarity. He didn't slam the door, didn't scream. Instead, he grabbed his car keys from the counter and walked out into the night. He drove in silence, parking his car at the edge of a nearby overlook. There, with only the sound of the wind and a distant highway, he tried to breathe and failed. His knuckles were white around the steering wheel. He couldn't cry, couldn't scream, just sat there as the image of his robe on a stranger played in his mind over and over. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he wrote in his journal. She said they were going to tell me, like I'm some afterthought, like I'm a fucking errand she forgot to check off the list. He wore my robe, not just my clothes, my space. That's the part that haunts me. How long, how many nights did I say I loved her while he was under the same roof? By morning, Alex's decision was made. He would go back, but not to forgive. Not yet. The morning haze hung low over the trees as Alex sat slumped behind the wheel, eyes bloodshot, back stiff from sleeping in his car, or rather, not sleeping. His mind had been a looping reel of imagined conversations, versions of himself that had screamed, demanded, broken something, done. But he hadn't. He'd walked away. And now, hours later, the silence felt unbearable. He drove aimlessly for a while, ending up at a rest stop off the highway, buying a coffee he wouldn't drink. Every face he passed looked too calm, too detached. How many of them, he wondered, had woken up from a night like his? He finally returned to the house, not to talk, not yet, but to gather clothes, a few things. That was the plan. In and out. The driveway was empty. Ironic. It would have been easier if they were both there so he could let the confrontation happen, get it over with. Instead, the house welcomed him with its usual serene quiet, as if nothing had changed. The same folded blanket on the couch, the same half-burned candle on the windowsill, the same lie stretched over every inch of air. Alex stepped into the guest house first. His chest tightened. The scent was different. Deodorant that wasn't his. A leather jacket hanging by the door. Definitely not his. One of his books, The Stranger, open on the nightstand. Pages folded. Corners bent. He didn't remember lending that out. He walked back to the main house, every step heavier than the last. He packed a duffel bag slowly, jeans, socks, toothbrush. Then, in the bedroom, he saw it. Her journal. She never hid it, just left it on her bedside table, wrapped in a leather cover, the strap loosely tied. He had never opened it before, respected her privacy, but now respect felt like a concept for another life. He hesitated only a second before untying the strap. Inside, pages and pages of neat, slanted handwriting, lists, observations, dreams, the kind of thoughts she never said aloud. And then it shifted. I feel like I'm living two lives, one entry began. With Alex, I feel safe, predictable. With Igor, I feel real, messy. Alex blinked. Sometimes I wonder if Alex even sees me anymore. But then I think, maybe that's what I need. Someone who doesn't look too hard. His hands trembled as he flipped further. Igor moved in quietly, at first just for a weekend. Then it became easier not to explain. Alex's routines are like clockwork. I knew he wouldn't notice. A stone dropped in his gut. She knew he wouldn't notice. Trusted his obliviousness more than his trust. He closed the journal. For a second, he just sat on the edge of the bed, stunned by how quiet betrayal could be. It didn't come with slammed doors or lipstick on collars. Sometimes it crept in while you were doing laundry, making tea, leaving the lights on in the guest house because you thought the cat wandered in. He left the journal exactly as he found it. Later that day, she texted, "Are you okay?" He stared at the screen. Not sorry, not can we talk. Just a breadcrumb of empathy tossed into a pit she'd helped. Didn't reply. That night, he found an old motel just outside the city, peeling wallpaper, no Wi-Fi, the kind of place no one would ever look for him. It was perfect. He picked up his guitar for the first time in weeks, fingers shaky, strings dusty, but the sound, when it came, was warm, familiar, honest. For the first time in days, he exhaled. The motel room had no clock. No ticking reminder of time moving forward, and yet Alex still felt it, each hour dragging over him like sandpaper. He spent the first day in silence, then the second. No calls from Lena, just one more text. "Please come back so we can talk. I miss you." He didn't answer. Instead, he drove to the grocery store across town, one Lena would never set foot in, and stocked up on canned soup, instant coffee, and the cheapest notebook he could find. Writing had become his lifeline, a place to put what he couldn't say aloud. But peace was temporary. 3 days into his self-exile, his phone rang. Not Lena, not even Igor. It was Mika, an old friend he hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey man," Mika began, voice tentative. "I wasn't sure if I should call, but I saw something." Alex sat up. "What is it?" "I was at Dre's bar last night, you know, the one near the lake. I saw Lena. She was with that guy, Igor." They weren't exactly being discreet. The breath caught in Alex's throat. "I thought she was trying to work things out with you." Alex couldn't answer, because he knew. Lena wasn't trying to fix anything. She was trying to keep him close enough to control, keep him soft, dull the edges of her betrayal just enough to avoid looking like the villain. He hung up, drove to the lake, not to confront her, but to see it with his own eyes. By the time he arrived, the sun had nearly set. Music floated from the open windows of the bar, laughter, glass clinking, and then there she was, Lena, leaning against Igor like she belonged there. She looked happy. Or rather, she looked free. And it was then he realized she wasn't waiting for him to come back. She was waiting to see if he'd come back. Like a test. A game. He left before she could see him. Back at the motel, something in him cracked. Not in fury, but in resolve. That night, he returned to the house for the second time. It was empty again. Maybe they were staying at Igor's now. Or maybe they assumed he wouldn't dare come back. He walked through the rooms with slow precision. Not looking for closure, just the truth, however quiet it might be. In the office, he found the receipts. Igor's name, multiple deliveries, one dated 2 months ago. 2 months. They'd been sharing space, time, groceries, while Alex was still holding her hand, still making her coffee every morning. And then a folder on Lena's desk, insurance documents, notes scribbled in the margins, and something that stopped him cold. A list, his name at the top. Underneath, routine-driven, emotionally dependent, passive when uncertain, loyal to a fault, traits she'd cataloged. Not in affection, but in assessment, like he was a risk to be managed. The page felt surgical, like love had been replaced by strategy. Alex left everything as it was, but took one thing with him, a photo of them from their second anniversary, smiling on a hiking trail covered in mud. She had been laughing so hard she dropped her phone. He remembered thinking, this is it. This is my person. Back in the car, the photo felt like a joke, a relic of a version of her that no longer existed, or maybe never had. He drove until the highway blurred into city lights, ended up in an all-night diner where the waitress called him sweetheart and didn't ask questions. He ate toast he didn't taste and stared at the people around him, couples, friends, strangers. It struck him how alone you could feel in the middle of a crowd, and yet how much calmer it was than being lied to in your own home. Later that night, he got another text, this time longer. I know I hurt you, but this doesn't have to end like this. Can we please talk in person? I need you. I really do. I might be pregnant. He stared at the screen. Fingers hovered over the keyboard, but something inside him had shifted too far. She needed him? No, she needed his reaction. She needed his confusion, his pain, his presence, because it made her feel less monstrous. It wasn't about love. It was about keeping him within reach. The next morning, he bought a small apartment in the city, a one-bedroom above a bookstore. It didn't have much, just white walls and cracked tile in the kitchen. But it was his. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the buildings, Alex strung his guitar for the first time in months. He sat by the open window, notebook in his lap, the sounds of the street humming below, and he wrote not to understand Lena, but to understand himself. The message hung on Alex's screen like a loaded weapon. I might be pregnant. Huh. No hello, no apology, just that, deliberately dropped like a trap dressed in vulnerability. He read it twice. 3 times, not because he doubted its contents, but because something in him refused to believe the timing. When all else had failed, when the guilt, silence, and nostalgia hadn't worked, this was the final card. He didn't respond, not right away. Instead, he opened his notebook and wrote. It's strange how quickly desperation can sound like love. She says she might be pregnant. The word might carries the weight of a lie disguised as hope. He knew he had to confront it, not for her, for himself. The next morning, he texted her, one line, "We'll talk tomorrow at the house." She replied in under a minute. "Thank you, I'm so relieved." And then, "You'll see. It's not what you think." That part was true. It never was. He returned to the house just past noon, parked at the edge of the driveway like a guest in his own life. The place looked untouched, perfectly serene, which only made it feel more false. It reminded him of a photograph. Pretty, still, but dead. Lena greeted him at the door with an expression carefully assembled, sorrow at the edges, soft around the eyes, just enough to suggest remorse without letting it curdle into shame. She opened her arms, expecting something. Maybe he didn't move. "Hey," she said gently. "Thank you for coming." "Let's not do that," Alex said, stepping past her into the hallway. "Let's skip the act." Lena's lips parted in protest, but then closed again. For once, she seemed unsure of the script. They sat across from each other in the living room, the same couch where they'd watched movies, made plans, dozed off during thunderstorms. Now it felt like a courtroom. "I just want to say," she began, "that I never meant for any of this to happen. It started before I understood how far we had drifted, and by the time I realized, I was afraid to break everything. I didn't want to hurt you." "But you did," Alex said, "and you kept doing it." Lena swallowed hard. "I know, but it wasn't like I stopped caring. I just lost sight of what we had, of what I wanted." Alex looked at her, really looked. She was still beautiful, still composed, but something in her eyes was different now. Less control, more calculation. "You told me you might be pregnant," he said. Lena nodded, hands folded neatly on her lap. "Yes, I'm late. A few weeks now. I haven't taken a proper test yet, but I felt like you deserved to know." He pulled a paper bag from his coat pocket. From it, he slid a sealed pregnancy test across the table. "Then take it now." Lena stared at it like it was radioactive. "I didn't mean that. I was gonna..." "Because here's the thing, Lena, I don't believe you. And I think you knew that. You've used up every piece of goodwill I had left." Her jaw tensed. "You think I'd lie about something like that?" "I think you'd lie about anything if it meant staying in control." Silence bloomed between them, thick and sharp. Then slowly she picked up the test and walked toward the bathroom without a word. He waited, not with dread, there was none left, but with cold clarity, the kind that comes only when illusions have finally rotted all the way through. 10 minutes later she came out. Her hands were empty. "So?" Alex asked. She looked away. Negative. A pause. Alex exhaled through his nose. Not relief, not anger, just confirmation. "Was it ever real?" he asked quietly. "Any of it?" Lena looked at him, eyes suddenly wet, but not with regret, with frustration, because the strings she'd pulled for years weren't working anymore. "Of course it was real," she said, "but people change. I changed. You just kept being the same." "And that was a problem?" "For me? Yeah, you always made me feel safe, but Igor made me feel alive. I know how that sounds, but it's the truth." Alex stood with, "That's not truth, that's an excuse. You could have talked to me. You could have left before it became this, but you wanted both. You wanted the comfort of me and the chaos of him." Her voice cracked. I didn't want to lose you, but you did, he said simply. He walked to the door, duffel already packed. This time, no journal, no hesitation, just a coat, keys, and a final thought. Lena followed. You're really leaving? I left a long time ago, he said without turning. At the threshold, he paused and looked back one last time. The house still looked the same, but nothing inside it was. The city was louder than he remembered. Not the chaos of noise, just life. Feet on sidewalks, laughter outside cafes, the low hum of trains in the distance. It wasn't peace, not exactly, but it was motion. And for the first time in weeks, Alex didn't feel like he was drowning in stillness. He moved into his new apartment 2 days after the final conversation with Lena, a modest place above a bookstore that smelled like paper and dust and long-forgotten dreams. The landlord had warned him about the pipes. They knocked like angry ghosts after midnight, but Alex didn't mind. He welcomed the noise. It made the place feel alive. There were no photos on the walls, no shared memories repurposed into decor, just space, open, untouched, waiting. He spent his first evening unpacking, with the windows open, city air mixed with guitar chords as he strummed softly, not rehearsing, just playing. The strings no longer trembled beneath uncertain fingers. The sound wasn't perfect, but it was his. On his second night, he started writing again, not the frantic entries from the motel, but something quieter, a blog titled simply, After. It wasn't for revenge or catharsis. It was for understanding. Not of Lena, but of himself, of why he'd ignored the signs, why he'd silenced his instincts in the name of love. The first post was short, honest. When someone shows you their truth, don't rewrite it into a prettier version you can live with, believe it. And choose yourself anyway. Within days, he had messages, quiet ones, people telling him they'd felt the same but never said it out loud, that they too had handed over parts of themselves just to be loved a little longer. It felt strange to connect with strangers more than with someone he'd once planned to marry. But it also felt good, clean. Then, one evening, it came, a letter. Handwritten, no return address. Lena's handwriting on the envelope. Alex held it for a while before opening it. There was no part of him that wanted an apology. But curiosity, that old rusted key, still turned. Inside, I'm sorry, for all of it, but especially for trying to make you doubt your own sense of reality. That was the worst thing I did, and I see it now. I hope you're finding peace. I hope you're sleeping. I hope you don't hate me. He didn't cry or get angry. He didn't even respond. He placed the letter in a drawer next to the photo from their second anniversary. Both of them covered in mud, laughing like kids. He didn't burn it, didn't tear it, just let it live in a place where it could collect dust, untouched, like a relic from a life he no longer needed. That night he made tea, turned off his phone, and left the window open to the sound of the street. He crawled into bed, alone, but not lonely. For the first time in weeks, there was no voice in his head dissecting the past, no phantom conversations, no what-ifs, just the soft weight of a blanket and the hum of a city that didn't know his name. He turned off the light, and for the first time in a long, long while, he slept. No plan, no pretending, just sleep.